Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm excited to be talking to River Gallo, who is writer, producer, and actor of the movie Ponyboi. And I love how much of a journey this film has had in terms of you writing as a short when you were still studying filmmaking, and then making that short, and then eventually adapting it into a feature film. And I was really interested in what that part of the development stage looked like in looking at the short film that you'd created and the story that you'd told and figuring out how you wanted to adapt this into a feature film because there's such an art form to that.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And it has been such a journey. It even went back further than than going to film school. This actually the real foundation and bones of it started when I was in acting school at NYU, and it started as a performance art piece that I would do, and it was much stranger then and very avant-garde. And I was like in this like blonde wig and a shopping cart. And it then when I went to film school a few years later, I just like couldn't shake this core character off me. And then when I it was my last year at film school, I was like, I need to explore this character again. Now exploring it with the lens of looking back at my intersex identity and the experience of my relationship with my family and my parents as it pertains to my gender, and the medical history that we experienced together, trying to navigate that part of my life. And so when I made the film in grad school, in film school, I always knew that I wanted it to be a feature, and I always knew that this would be a sort of introduction to myself, to the industry at large. And I just, I guess I had this feeling that I needed to put all the cards on the table and be as unapologetically myself and as bold as possible, in order for someone like me to put their story out there, and to put the story out there for other people who haven't seen themselves on screen before. And selfishly, I think I just needed to figure out a lot of things about myself through the movie, in a way that the short film didn't allow me to fully explore. And so I just knew that the journey had to end in a feature-length film where I could completely dive into just all the aspects of myself, of this message of personal agency and empowerment that I think the film represents.
I also love what you're describing there about how personal a lot of this story is, and it's kind of really beautiful how specific a lot of the story is, and at the same time, there's these bigger concepts of what is it like to reconcile with your past, and what is it like to feel really stuck in the present and really yearning for something in the future, but not quite knowing what that is and how to attain it yet. And I was interested if you were thinking more about just writing very specifically, or if you were thinking about those broader themes and topics at the same time as you were writing it.
I think both. I think they were kind of one and the same. I just remember my experience being a kid who found out that they were intersex, and knowing that it was a secret, that I didn't have the resources or really even the language to talk about it with other people. I mean, I actually didn't know the word intersex um, until I was writing the short film. I thought I just had this like strange medical condition that I like couldn't talk about. And so for me, I think a lot of my life has been under the framework of like not fully knowing something about myself, a core part about myself, while at the same time knowing that that unknowingness was a big part of myself. And so and that to what you're talking about, that yearning comes from wanting to be intimate to the parts of myself that I deemed as like bad or like secretive, or things that were uncomfortable to talk about. And but this deep, deep longing to wanting to embrace those parts of me, but just not knowing how. And I guess for me, it was through acting first, and then in the theater, and then through the process of making this movie was that I got the opportunity to get closer to those parts of myself. And but even in a more broader lens, um, the movie takes place in New Jersey. I'm from New Jersey, and I just always felt that um, being from New Jersey, particularly so close to New York, I had my whole life just felt like I was on the periphery of being at the center of the universe, and but just being like a bridge and tunnel away from all that magic. And I guess I think that's the hallmark of like what it means to be from New Jersey is like you kind of always feel like you're an outsider and things are just outside of your reach. And for so long, I feel like I resisted that feeling of like, of not being a New Yorker. And through this movie, I think I found so much pride in yeah, in being from New Jersey and being okay with the fact that um where I'm from is good, and where I'm from made me the person that I am, and it gave me a different perspective of my art and of life in general. And um so yeah, I think in multiple different ways my identity and my life experience made it so that I was constantly feeling like I needed to be somewhere else or be someone else. But the movie is a lot about like, perhaps it is okay um, to fully honor yourself and accept yourself, even in the parts of yourself that are uncertain.
Yeah, and I think also it's an acceptance of fallibilities of yourself as well, which we see Ponyboy kind of go through. And in having heard you talk about the film, I know that you've kind of mentioned how Ponyboy's someone who's never been prioritized by anybody in their life, and because of that, it sometimes causes certain actions which are hurtful towards others. And I was
Yeah.
interested in how you really thought about the fallibilities of this character as you were creating it and performing it.
I think there is a trope in queer, maybe trans cinema, which is, relatively, I guess trans cinema is relatively newer, but of like, you know, of the trans or the gender nonconforming person of needing to be like the saint, of needing to like, we need good representation that like paints us to be like good people that, our biggest struggle was the fact that we transitioned, and then after that happened everything was sunshine and rainbows. And what I wanted to fight against with this movie was the fact that like Ponyboy's fucked up. Like Ponyboy, you know is truly at a crossroads on this Valentine's Day of all all his past mistakes and all the ways in which he has betrayed friends, betrayed himself, um, but all because he was holding on to this like deep-seated trauma of the intersection between his gender identity and his family not accepting him. So like there was like a reason for why he's fucked up. And for me, I just like wanted this redemption story of someone that for the first time, life threw a lot of stuff in one day, that was forcing them to reckon with yeah, just like the wreckage of their past, and in that sort of a doorway to the possibility of being able uh, to actualize themselves.
One of the scenes I know a lot of people have really connected to is the conversation between Ponyboy and Charlie, played by India Moore. And it sounds like that scene went through various iterations in terms of the writing and kind of finding that placement of there being conflict between them at the beginning. So you kind of don't know where that scene's going to go to start with. And India bringing perspective of what that conversation could also include and adding a few lines in. And so I wanted to ask about, through writing and performing with India, how that scene continued to constantly evolve.
Yeah, that scene, I always from very early on, I was always like, that is the heart of the movie. And it had been on like the chopping block at certain points through, my director, my producer, all well-intentioned because, I hadn't written a good scene. But I was just like, no, 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 please, please trust me that when we find the actress to play this, I will work with her to make this scene possible. And I guess for me, what I was fighting was like making like this like trans fairy godmother trope of like, oh, this character coming in and, in the movie, Ponyboy is uh on the run from the mob, but also searching for these gender affirming, life affirming hormones before they leave town. And then they bump into India Moore's character, Charlie, who sells hormones to the community. And I just knew that well, what India brought in was this subject of realness and passing in the trans community and ballroom culture of how there's like this hierarchy between girls who can pass and girls who can't pass as cis women. Um, and here's Ponyboy, who's like clearly something else, not a trans woman, trans questioning, intersex and is dealing with the possibility of maybe he does want to transition, but maybe he's too scared. Maybe the fact that he's never known other options than to take one hormone, and India brings in the possibility of perhaps you would like to switch a hormone and be someone else. And and so for me, that dialogue between an intersex person and potentially trans questioning person and this trans woman and talking about the intricacies of what it means to live in a society dominated by patriarchy that even is pervasive within our own queer community, um, to adhere to some kind of gender binary. And here is a character who doesn't really know which binary to go on. And through this conversation, what they land on through um, a lot of shade thrown at each other and a lot of, conflict, they land on the fact that like maybe it's okay for him not to know for now, and that the answer will come eventually about where he wants his destiny to go. And so for me, as a intersex, non-binary, trans femme person myself, is a personal issue that I still face today. Of like, sometimes I think my life would be easier if I, decided to pick a side or something and stick to it, for safety issues or for, just the way I'm perceived in the world. But I just, I just know that the future is in embracing that sort of ambiguity in my gender. And like Ponyboy, like I think I've learned through this film that I love those parts of myself that are very in between, and are kind of undefinable. And I hope that the audience sees that as well in that scene and in my work and in the movie in general.
No, I love that description, and I think it's part of why that scene really stands out so much in the film. And there's also this aspect of Ponyboy with this just hopeful romanticness,
Yeah.
even just the idea of I've always wanted to go to Vegas and get married there, and that's an idea that I've always had in my mind. And I
You?
no, 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 for the character.
Okay, okay. I was like, you want us to go to Vegas?
But I wanted to ask about it in terms of how you initially started thinking of Ponyboy as a hopeless romantic, and then Esteban, who directed the film, I believe, was the one to be like, actually, Ponyboy's a hopeful romantic, and how that
Yeah.
kind of changed your perspective of the romanticism within the character.
Yeah, I love how he was able to articulate that about Ponyboy because I personally believe, River believe that, love is like the ultimate thing to hope for, and like that love, the energy of love, which transcends just like romantic love, like, love for myself, for each other, for community, for God, for my family, like that is like the animating and defining force of all of our lives. But in so many ways, when people like Ponyboy, like myself in many aspects of my life, have been starved from love that has felt uh, caring, or love that has felt for, specifically for queer or trans people, like you have to kind of, you know, settle for the crumbs that have been given to you. But I'm sure a lot of us settle for love that, that is offered for you, and feel like, oh, well, I have to make this work because this is the only thing in front of me. Um, to actually be able to um, like accept that we are so much more deserving of a deeper love that can be like a healing force in our lives. And I think that's where the hopefulness of love comes in. Or what Esteban's point is of a hopeful romantic. I mean, to me, I feel like Ponyboy, the character, is a very spiritual and witchy person, and knowing despite acting as if, the best they could do is, be having sex with their best friend's baby daddy on the side. um I think deep down they know that they feel a deep guilt and shame about that, and they know that they are worthy of being an actual good friend, of having a love that can be all their own, and not just like some, the side chick on the side. And so I I think so many people can relate to that aspect, and I know I do. I mean, I just feel like Ponyboy, that aspect of Ponyboy reflected a lot of my own feelings of how I've dealt with romance at certain points in my life.
And a lot of that gets represented in the possibility of Murray Bartlett's character who plays Bruce in the
Yeah.
film. And I love the kind of meet cute between them in the laundromat that Ponyboy works at, bonding over Bruce Springsteen, and then kind of tentatively singing I'm on fire into the broom. How did that particular moment come about in that particular song choice for the two of you?
And, you probably have seen many interviews. I talk about my love for Bruce Springsteen all the time. And actually, it was his autobiography that was the source material when I was writing the short film. So his work, his autobiography, but also like just his whole catalog of music has been a huge inspiration throughout my entire process, not in just Ponyboy, but in all my work. Um, just for the sheer fact of how he's able to really describe like the poetry of what it means to be from New Jersey. But I think in the short film there was like almost the same scene. Some of those that scene was one of the scenes that like almost line by line was also in the short film. But in the short film, I think Bruce just asked Ponyboy, like, what's your favorite Bruce Springsteen song? And then Ponyboy just says it. And then I think in the future I was like, we should do it. And it's just such a cute and endearing moment where like we kind of step outside of, or we get a first taste of this kind of being a surreal relationship, with a tone of fantasy. And it was actually really crazy because for a while we didn't think that we were going to have access to the song, because Bruce Springsteen had sold his rights to his music, and the people that did own the rights to the music didn't want us to use it. And like 2 days before our final cut, we had actually cut that part of the scene with them singing at all. So it worked, but it was just like you missed that magical element. And then I had to write this letter to Bruce Springsteen himself and explain just like what his entire work meant to me as an artist, and also what it meant to this particular moment in the scene, and then just describe like what it meant, this whole movie meant to me and my intersex identity and all that in literally like 3 paragraphs. Um, To this day, I think that's one of the greatest pieces of writing I've ever done. And this is before ChatGPT. And I sent this letter, and then like literally the day before we locked the picture, he wrote back and he said, you know, how much he loved the letter and that how this feels like this is going to be a great movie and that he would love to let us use the song. So, and it ended up staying in the movie, and we got the boss's stamp of approval, and it was I still have the email saved.
That's incredible. Was that one of the highlights of this entire experience in
I
making the
think
film?
so. I
Yeah.
think so. Just knowing that he like knew that I existed for a brief moment, yeah, was.
So you're going to be there at the cinemas day one when the Jeremy Allen White film comes out.
Right, yeah.
I love that. I also even just love the small detail between Ponyboy and Bruce when they pinky swear at the diner, and Ponyboy's like, "No, you have to bite your thumb as well to really seal it." And there's just this intimacy in that action. How did that particular action come about in that scene?
You know, actually, I've been doing pinky promises. I mean, like, that's not anything special. Many people do pinky promises, but like me and my mom do pinky promises, and like me and my best friend. And it was actually one of my best friends in high school that was like, you have to bite it or else you don't mean it. And so it's funny because we had a screening in New York a few months ago, and some of my friends from high school in New Jersey came, and they just like recognize so many references that I make. Like there's certain lines that like are names of people from like teachers in our high school, or like that moment particularly. Like there's so much of like just my own personal life details that are in that, but that came from just something that me and my best friend would do.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's also a part of the journey for Ponyboy in having a certain understanding of why their parents always called him Ponyboy, and then discovering it's something completely different. And actually, it was this huge compliment all along that he never realized. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to ask about shaping that part of the self-discovery within the story.
It's funny because as soon as you asked that, I immediately was brought back to the day where we were going to shoot that scene, and I was in my trailer in the getting dressed, and how my producers were like, "We're cutting the scene," and I was like, no." And again, all in the name of trying to make the day, make the movie happen. But to me, I remember standing my ground so much because I was like, that scene, what it represents is um, kind of just our misconceptions and our misguided reality of of the meaning of the origins of where we came from. And to me, you know, Ponyboy felt like the name started as his dad making fun of him to, you know, because he played with dolls, but it really, his namesake actually was about him, about the love that he had for his dad, and about that, how he always wanted to impress his dad and make him proud. And I think particularly for queer and trans people, who many of us have fraught relationships with family members or parents. I fortunately have an incredible relationship with my parents. Um, there's this feeling of like where home life can feel like cursed, like something that we're bound or trapped by the memories that we had and the pain that we have towards it. And for Ponyboy, it felt like that his entire life. And then to know at the very end, after this insane, crazy day, to receive this huge gift that actually his name is something beautiful that his dad nicknamed him. I just think that reversal is um, just really powerful for someone of his gender, and just for anybody watching him, thinking that I know there's just been a lot of moments in my life where I thought like, oh, that's the worst thing about me, and then actually thinking like, oh, actually, it's the best thing about me. And that switch is just it can be miraculous, I think.
Yeah, I'm so glad hearing that journey of that scene ending up still in the film, that you were all
Yeah.
able to figure out how to still make it happen.
Yeah.
And I really, really enjoyed the film and all of the work that you've done on it. So
Oh, thank you.
congratulations. And
Thank you
I'm
so
excited to
much.
see what you make in the future. Thank you so much, River.
Thank you.